I'm not trying to console you, but you knew there was a high chance of this happening. And it doesn't really change anything. We still must fight. Hey, how's it going? In today's video, we'll be going over the Shinju, and we'll specifically be analyzing where they came from, what exactly are they, and what makes them so dangerous. We'll also be going over Boruto and Kashin Koji's various plans on dealing with them in the upcoming chapters. This video will contain spoilers for the Boruto manga. You have been warned. With that being said, let's get started. The Shinju are without a doubt the biggest threat the characters in this franchise have ever faced. These characters are not Otsutsuki, they're not even shinobi either, yet they have traits of both, placing them in a league beyond what either category could do separately. They are completely unnatural entities that shouldn't even exist in the first place. This was never the path the Ten Tails should have ever taken. In Chapter 71 of Boruto Part 1, Code was having a very successful day. He got his limiters removed by Amato for a start, which in turn made him significantly stronger. He felt like he couldn't lose to anyone. He also had powerful allies in Ada and Damon, some of the most strongest characters to have ever existed. Code having Ada as an ally also meant that he had the benefit of using her Sharingan, which in turn allowed him to keep tabs on his enemies through intel from Ada. And Damon was Code's ace up his sleeve. He was a very powerful partner for Code to have in combat potentially, and in addition to that, as we saw in Chapter 67 of Part 1, Code used Damon's Reflect Shinjutsu to protect himself from Kawaki. He basically had a get out of jail free card. Code finally got the chance to kill Amato as well, someone who betrayed Ishiki and therefore was on Code's retribution list. So Code was on his way at achieving everything he wanted in the world. He had the perfect foundation as an antagonist. Then Amato flipped the script on Code because in Chapter 69 he figured out that Ada had feelings for Kawaki. Being the master manipulator that Amato is, it took little to no effort to get Ada and Damon on his side rather than Code's side, just based off of the premise and hopes of Ada and Kawaki meeting under normal circumstances. In literally seconds, Code went from being on top of his game to losing some of his strongest allies. He also got humiliated by Damon and forced to retreat. Amato's tactics forced Code's hand. So just like many other characters in this series, Code reached a decision point. If he can't have an army of cyborgs, he was going to create his own army and settle things with his enemies on his own terms. He molded the Ten Tails into miniature soldiers called claw grimes. But Code was rather foolish because he didn't fully understand the capabilities of the entity that he was messing with. He thought that the Ten Tails was just a tool to serve his will and the will of the Otsutsuki, never realizing that this is a living creature that is separate from him in terms of mindset. Boruto warns Code on two separate occasions of what the Ten Tails is truly capable of in 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 2. Boruto literally told Code that by giving the Ten Tails a humanoid form, he was giving the beast the ability to think and learn. While the Ten Tails' goal was always to devour an Otsutsuki under normal circumstances, Code doing what he did had caused them to diverge from their original plan. The claw grind were no longer looking for just Otsutsuki to eat. They started devouring regular humans as well. The claw grind created miniature divine trees, which in turn was a result of consuming a non-Otsutsuki character. And this happened to several individuals into Blue Vortex. It's bad enough that the victims get turned into trees, but they aren't even dead. As we learned in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 3, not only can't they die, but their chakra is being harvested to serve the Ten Tails itself. With the exception of Jura, all the Shinju we've seen so far in the series have taken the forms and personalities of characters we've seen before, notable characters being Moegi, Bug, Shinki, and Sasuke. But how are the Shinju able to exist in the forms that they do? To answer that question, we have to take a look at what chakra was truly intended to accomplish in life. In Boruto Chapter 29 of Part 1, Kawaki was fascinated by a sparring session that Naruto had with his son Boruto earlier in the chapter. Kawaki liked the idea of sparring via ninjutsu training. Naruto tells Kawaki that he too can utilize ninjutsu. and Kawaki quickly shows doubt up to this idea. Kawaki is not a ninja, and so aren't ninja the only ones who can use chakra? And then Naruto tells him that no, that sure, ninja can use chakra to empower their ninjutsu techniques, but chakra exists in all living beings. It was never exclusive to just ninja. Naruto then breaks down Hagoromo's concept of ninshu to Kawaki without ever using the specific term. From Naruto's perspective, the real essence of chakra is that it is a binding force, a force that connects everyone. Naruto instills the belief in Kawaki that everyone is connected through chakra, including himself. Hagoromo in chapter 670 of the original Naruto series explained to Naruto that he provided humanity the teachings of ninshu to give people a better understanding of not only themselves, but others as well. Ninshu was designed to lead the world towards an era of peace. And then he explained that ninshu was eventually morphed into ninjutsu because of mankind's tendency to be selfish and bloodthirsty, turning chakra into a weapon for war. But hearing Naruto's explanation helped push Kawaki forward a little later in the series because Kawaki was able to combine his chakra with Boruto's to form the Rasengan Unison, which they used against Boro. They put their mental and physical energies together and acted as one and produced something stronger than they ever would have separately. And it's the same for Boruto and Naruto. When Naruto connected his chakra to his sons to kill Momoshiki without exchanging a single word, Boruto understood the hardships that Naruto had to overcome in his life to get so strong. Their connection was tied to ninshu. In Two Blue Vortex chapter 5, we saw that Jura in his own twisted way is following the concept of ninshu, although he doesn't know what the concept is in a literal sense. Jura's philosophy on life is that in order for people to understand themselves and their purpose, they must follow their instincts. Jura looked within himself and wanted to eat a non-Otsutsuki character. And when the other Shinju looked within themselves, they wanted to devour characters who were close to claw grind victims, because those characters, or rather targets, were valued greatly by those who were turned into a tree. I want to use Hidari as an example. So Hidari looked within himself and decided that he would pick Sarada Uchiha as the target in which he would devour. Hidari is a piece of the Ten Tails, and Hidari can use Sasuke's chakra at his will. This is a forceful bonding through chakra, and so Hidari is tapping into Sasuke's thoughts via ninshu, and that's when he realized that Sarada was the closest thing in his heart because that's the closest thing in Sasuke's heart. But Hidari is a monster and his instinct is to devour. So he didn't interpret this idea in a human-like manner. Hidari reached the conclusion that he needed to devour Sarada to become whole, not realizing that it's actually Sasuke's love for his daughter that pushes him forward in life. This is similar for Ryu and Matsuri as well. Gaara adopted Shinki and gave him a purpose, a home, and a sense of family. He was a great leader in Shinki's eyes, and Gaara's prosperity would lead the Hidden Sand Village to prospering for many years. So of course Shinki wanted to do everything in his power to keep his adopted father alive. Konohamaru is Moegi's best friend, and that's why he is the closest thing in her heart. In a way, the Shinju are the polar opposite of Jinchuriki. Jinchuriki are humans who can tap into the power of a Bijuu and enhance their current jutsu as well as gain additional fighting abilities. While the Shinju are pieces of a Bijuu that tap into the power of captured humans in order to gain a form, personality, and unique fighting abilities. So let's now go over Jura because he's a special case. Jura, unlike the other Shinju, is not based on a victim of a claw grime attack. He is a direct incarnation of the Ten Tails itself. So no matter what the process was for the Ten Tails to get self-awareness, Jura would always be born. He was actually an unaltered Ten Tails that was given self-awareness thanks to code. As long as Jura exists, the darkest timeline will also have the possibility of occurring. And I wanted to use this scenario to paint a picture for how powerful Jura truly is. In Naruto chapter 610, Naruto tried to enter Sage Mode to measure the power of the Ten Tails, only for Kurama to tell him that it was impossible. The Ten Tails is made up of natural energy, the same energy that comes from natural elements such as air, water, and soil. Naruto was completely overwhelmed by the power. Although this is a different Ten Tails, we can only imagine that this is the same scale of power that Jura has. But what makes Jura a lot worse is that he has intelligence and a humanoid form, giving him a lot more mobility as well. So now we need to address the worst possible future or darkest timeline. And this is a reality that Boruto and Kashin Koji are actively fighting against. What makes the darkest timeline so terrible is that everyone on Earth would die once a divine tree is planted. The divine tree would devour all chakra that exists or has ever existed on the planet and bring forth a divine chakra fruit. Like Code explained in chapter 62 of Boruto Part 1, unless you try to escape to another dimension, the tree will take your chakra and kill you. With the exception of Boruto, Code, and Kawaki, most people on the planet are in jeopardy of getting killed because of this issue. This is a similar premise to what was shown in the 4th Great Shinobi War. In Naruto chapter 646, a title chapter called Divine Tree by the way, Obito managed to successfully use his powers as a Ten-Tail Shinchuriki to plant a divine tree on Earth. This tree went through the devour process as well because it was grabbing any and all chakra it could find and taking it from whoever or whatever was around. The tree killed in order to gain chakra to essentially manifest a chakra fruit. If you reread this chapter or watch this moment in the anime, there were several instances where shinobi were getting devoured. They were sucked dry of all their chakra and died instantaneously. The Shinju characters can perform the same process but on a smaller scale unless they're eating an otsutsuki, presumably. This is not the same process as a claw grind biting a victim and turning that target into a tree. When a Shinju devours a target, the target will die. Hidari tried to devour Sarada in 2 Blue Vortex chapter 10, and he likely would have taken all of her chakra if he was successful, and her knowledge as well in his own twisted attempt to become a full-fledged individual who understands himself. The war to prevent the darkest timeline is a secret war because as we learned in the latest chapter as of the recording of this video, chapter 16, we now know about the concept of singularities. Singularities of fate are individuals who know about the future prior to it happening. Because they know the direction that the future can potentially take, they have the ability to change history and make the timeline diverge from how events were originally supposed to play out. Once an individual becomes a singularity, forever is their destiny changed, because as long as they are alive, they will continue to affect the future and change it whether directly or indirectly. Because of this, it is not wise for singularities to expose the future to other characters on a whim. Knowledge of the timeline is a double-edged sword because it could push things further in a positive direction or a worse direction as well. The more singularities there are, the less effective the existing singularities will have at changing the timeline. Because the more people learn about their destinies, it's more likely that they'll make different choices and they'll make decisions whether logically or illogically based on that preconceived knowledge. Boruto, Ada, and Kashin Koji are the 3 main singularities in the story as of the recording of this video. Kawaki, in my opinion, also became a singularity of fate at the end of chapter 15 of 2 Blue Vortex because he was given intel about his future self's idea to gain more power by listening to Boruto. I also don't believe we saw their full conversation at the end of chapter 15, and for all we know, Boruto told him a lot more information than we think he did. A common misconception in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex is that Boruto himself is the hero of the story. While I do agree that Boruto is the star of the series, the true protagonist in my opinion in 2 Blue Vortex is Kashin Koji. He is literally the mastermind behind everything. Similar to his creator Amato, he is playing a game of shogi and using all the pieces on his board and placing them in specific directions so that he can defeat the Shinju. Boruto is simply acting as an extension of Kashin Koji's will. To put it in the context of a chess piece, Boruto would be Koji's knight. Kashin Koji has literally been working around the clock to manipulate events to prevent the darkest timeline. Two Blue Vortex Chapter 13 is where we learned about Kashin Koji's Shinjutsu, which is prescience, which is a very powerful technique allowing him to see into multiple different futures from the current timeline. And these are all possibilities that could end up happening if the characters reach certain decision points and make specific decisions. Koji witnessed the birth of the Shinju 3 years prior to them even existing, and he knew that 5 Shinju being born was in a possible future. But we as an audience know that only Jura, Matsuri, Hidari, and Mamushi were born in Chapter 4. I believe Koji made a gesture to try to prevent that image he saw in Chapter 13. Kashin Koji reverse summoned Boruto to Orochimaru's old hideout in the Land of Wind. In my opinion, this wasn't by accident. I believe Boruto was supposed to go to the Land of Wind at some point as he was wandering as a rogue ninja. I believe that in Boruto's unaltered future, he was confronted by Shinki and the Sand Ninja on his journeys while he was traveling through the Land of Wind. And then because of Boruto's appearance, Code also appeared in this potential future. And because Code appeared, it's likely that Shinki ended up getting bitten earlier in the timeline by a claw grime and turned into a tree, leading to Ryu being born around the same time as Jura and the others, which in fact we did not see in Chapter 4, and in fact we saw Ryu get born in Chapter 15. I believe Koji sending Boruto to the Land of Wind earlier in the timeline and hiding Boruto was a gesture against time itself to prevent Ryu from ever being created. So it would be impossible for the Shinju picture that he saw via prescience to ever exist. And because of this unaltered timeline, Code would not be able to attack the Sand Village with his claw grime since he wouldn't know that Boruto was in the hidden sand in this altered timeline. But ultimately, Kashin Kochi failed in preventing the birth of Ryu because of the actions of Matsuri tracking Koji's chakra to the Land of Wind, and history unfortunately played out as it was supposed to, even though it was a little delayed. I do believe Kashin Koji has several contingency plans for dealing with the Shinju, and we just saw Plan A get executed during the first 4 chapters of Two Blue Vortex. Plan A was to force Code to lead Boruto to the Ten Tails, and there were several phases associated with this plan. Phase 1 was to lure Code to the Leaf Village. Phase 2 was to make Code feel threatened. Phase 3 was to essentially disable Code so he couldn't fight. Phase 4 would be to make Code give up the Ten Tails location in exchange for his own life. And Phase 5 would be to destroy the Ten Tails. Phase 1 of the plan occurred in Chapter 1 of the series and likely would have taken off a lot sooner, but Boruto and Kashin Koji had to wait for Code to get tired of looking for Boruto for 2 years and reach the decision point to attack the Leaf Village in the hopes of drawing Boruto out because Code understood that Boruto still had a emotional connection to this place. And Code was right, but little did Code know that he was not the predator in this situation. He was the prey. Phase 2 occurred in Chapter 2, and this phase was critical. Boruto and Kashin Koji had to mess with Code on a psychological level. Code may be power hungry, but he is still all about self-preservation, and he is not willing to throw his life away, and they needed to exploit this in Code. Boruto makes a threat to Code relating to their previous encounter. You'll lose more than your left eye this time if you don't leave. Boruto knew Code would be cocky and see him the same exact way he did 2 years ago and would not take Boruto seriously. But Boruto was successful in planning the idea of killing Code in his mind, which was exactly what he wanted. Although at the moment, Code viewed this threat as a bluff. So Code, not respecting Boruto's power, sent his claw grimes to fight Boruto on his behalf, and Boruto easily dispatched of them. He doesn't even break a sweat by using his sword, and Boruto's demonstration was to place a little doubt in Code's heart. And it worked. Code remained arrogant, but at the very least, he did acknowledge that Boruto improved a little bit. In Code's mind, the claw grinds were just mere tools, and that Code himself would be more than enough to take on Boruto. Phase 3 of Boruto's plan was being executed the moment he decided to activate the Rasengan Uzuhiko, and he specifically announced the name to Code. So when Code hears the name Rasengan Uzuhiko in Chapter 3 and tries to associate it with the previous incarnations of this technique, Once again, he was underestimating Boruto, and he didn't realize what was to be expected. Code gets hit with the Rasengan Uzuhiko not once, but twice. He never realized that the moment he made contact with Boruto, the match was over before it truly began. And phase 3 was a success. Code was feeling the entire rotation of the planet going through his body. He was completely disabled. Boruto overpowered Code in every single way, and now the threat of killing him was a lot more legitimate. While Code did want godhood, what good would that be if Boruto had killed him? Boruto forced Code's hand. At this point, Boruto was forcing Code to make a decision that he likely saw through Kashin Koji's prescience. Code was very likely going to lead Boruto to the Ten Tails in exchange for sparing his life. But thanks to Kawaki's stupidity, Code managed to escape, and this in turn messed up Boruto and Kashin Koji's plan a little bit. Kawaki making the decision to attack Boruto was something Koji and Boruto likely anticipated as well, and therefore they had the backup plan of using the flying Raijin to teleport to the dimension holding the Ten Tails. If Kawaki didn't interfere, then it's likely Boruto would have made it in time to kill the Ten Tails' body. We learned in 2 Blue Vortex chapter 12 that the Rasengan Uzuhiko has no limits. Therefore, it can potentially become the strongest Rasengan that ever existed given the amount of wait time used to charge it up. I believe that if Boruto made it to the dimension holding the Ten Tails a little bit earlier, he would have used the flying Raijin to teleport the Bijou somewhere on Earth. Then I believe Boruto would have used a fully charged Rasengan Uzuhiko to destroy the Ten Tails, therefore preventing the birth of the Shinju and completely erasing the darkest timeline. So from Blue Vortex chapter 5 all the way to chapter 16, we are witnessing Boruto and Koji's plan B. In chapter 12, we learned about the concept of the Thorn Soul Bulb, the Shinju's #1 vulnerability, and why Jura deems Boruto and Kashin Koji too dangerous to be kept alive. This item is a mystical seed containing the information needed to manifest the physical existence of all Shinju. It is also the key to freeing victims of the claw grinds that were trapped in failed divine tree attempts, though we don't know how this is possible just yet. I suspect it may take direct exposure to the divine tree to free someone with the Thorn Soul Bulb. This is what Boruto and Kashin Koji are actively hunting down in this secret war. So with Blue Vortex chapter 16, we learned a little bit more insight on what Koji's plan is in dealing with the Shinju directly. Koji wants to take the divide and conquer approach. He wants to avoid any and all direct conflict with Jura as much as possible. If the Shinju split up and run errands because of their different personalities and respective goals, then that is the appropriate time to deal with any and all Shinju threats. But the moment Jura shows up, run on sight, because if Jura is provoked according to Kashin Koji, there is no hope for a positive future. And Koji's strategy was very apparent in chapters 11 and 12 of 2 Blue Vortex. The moment Boruto saved Himawari in chapter 11 from Jura, he did not stay and fight Jura. He immediately used the flying Raijin to get his sister and himself away, and then he teleported to Hidari's location and fought Hidari directly. This was the divide and conquer method in action. Boruto has gotten a lot stronger, and no one can debate that, but the concern is brought up from chapters 15 and 16. And it's the fact that Boruto can't fight all the Shinju by himself. He is outnumbered and he is going to need allies. And I believe Kashin Koji wants to use people closest to Boruto to make that happen. The members of Team 7 are the perfect candidates to become singularities and valuable assets in the war against the Shinju. But they need to be prepared and they need to get stronger. And this is how I believe that is going to happen. The key for Sarada to grow stronger ties back into the Mangekyo Sharingan. And a lot of people have disagreed with me over this topic for several months, but I genuinely believe that she is unaware she possesses this eye. We're 16 chapters into 2 Blue Vortex as of the recording of this video, and we have yet to see her activated in a life or death situation. Her not using that eye against the claw grind kind of makes sense, I guess, in chapter 2, but she obviously had no reason to not use the Mangekyo against Hidari in the other chapters. I believe at some point Boruto is going to tell Sarada about the Mangekyo Sharingan, and he's likely going to do so through Kashin Koji's knowledge through prescience. We haven't seen Sarada activate this eye since the part 1 finale, which was chapter 80. The reason I believe she doesn't know she has this eye is because Sasuke never confirms out loud that she has the Mangekyo Sharingan. And I believe he didn't tell her because that was his way of protecting her, because the Mangekyo, after all, is an eye associated with darkness. And if you watch the Boruto anime, specifically episode 171, it becomes even more apparent on why Sasuke in the manga would have withheld this information from Sarada to protect her and also put his wife's worries at ease. Sarada did pretty well against Hidari in their first encounter, and she managed to dodge his direct attacks most of the time and was able to damage him a little bit. She's no pushover even without the Mangekyo, I just wanted to say that. But once she unlocks this eye, she is going to be broken. I am almost guaranteed she's going to get some crazy abilities. And of course, we'll see the likelihood of the return of the Susanoo and Amaterasu. If Sarada gains access to space-time ninjutsu, that will also be great. It would mean that she could save herself and others in the darkest timeline if that arises. And it would be awesome if she gains the Tosca blade like Itachi, or uncle, or the Tsukiyomi as well, but that's just speculation. The way Sarada wore her headband in the end of chapter 16 made me suspect that at some point she will also get the Byakugo seal. And I believe Sakura would be the one who would have taught her how to gain this seal in the 3-year time period. Sarada using this power was heavily foreshadowed in part 1 of the manga, believe it or not. So taking it back to Boruto chapter 35 of part 1, Sarada was the one in the chapter to point out to Boruto and the others that the Karma seal looks very similar to the seal on Sakura's forehead. Naruto explains that this is a regeneration jutsu and that both Sakura and the 5th Hokage were capable of using it. Boruto and the others look at the carving on Tsunade's forehead on the stone wall, and Boruto himself admits that it is the exact same shape as the Karma, but Naruto has doubts that they are related because of the fact that this is a technique used by shinobi and it's ninjutsu. But then Mitsuki of all people intervenes and says that according to Orochimaru, this seal dates back to years ago, and there's a lot as an audience and as the characters at the time don't know about it. Sarada then decides to ask her mom for more intel. In chapter 36, Sakura breaks down the role of the Byakugo seal, how it's used to store chakra of the user over a series of years, and when activated provides the user with incredible power. This is a similar premise to the Karma because the Karma stores Otsutsuki data and extracts that data on a vessel over time, and the vessel can then activate that Karma to gain incredible power as well. Sakura even points out that the Byakugo seal dates back to the age of the Sage of Six Paths, and I believe that Hagoromo was the one who invented this technique. This was his own variant of Karma, but it was intended for Ninshu. The common problem with the Mangekyo Sharingan, as explained by Itachi, is that the more the user uses that eye, the quicker they will descend into darkness and go blind. I believe this has to do with the fact that the Mangekyo must put an extreme amount of strain on the overall structure and muscles within the eye. Hence why the Uchiha bleed when they use certain techniques. It is an unnatural amount of strain that they are putting on their eyes, and the eye can only take so much. Uchiha with the regular Mangekyo likely go through retinal detachment. The retina is the layer of cells at the back of your eyeball that converts light into nerve signals. It sends those light signals as optic nerves to your brain. Your brain then processes these signals in the sense of vision. And at that point, if this is damaged and your retina suffers, then your vision will suffer as well. But used in combination with the Byakugo seal, the Mangekyo Sharingan's weakness can effectively be bypassed. Sarada can quite literally regenerate any damaged tissue or organs at any part of her body. So that would include the cells that make up the structure of her eyes. So she has a lot of incentive to get the Byakugo seal as well, and I believe Boruto may tell her to do this. I could see a point where Konohamaru learns to trust Boruto post-omnipotence. He was shown to be quite merciful to Boruto in the interrogation room in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter 14. And he was willing to work with Boruto against Hidari when he saw that Sarada trusted Boruto. Boruto may expand Konohamaru's horizons on how to improve on the Rasengan barrier or his other jutsu as well, making their student-teacher dynamic go full circle, with Boruto now being the teacher and Konohamaru being a student. Mitsuki could also become Boruto's eyes and ears inside of the village. I am not sure if there are any ways that Boruto could help Mitsuki improve in terms of his combat skill, but I could see Mitsuki becoming an excellent partner in combat when fighting alongside Boruto, maybe against Ryu, and because of their similar affinity for lightning style, they would be a deadly combination. Kawaki will be a major player in the war against the Shinju because out of every character in the series, he actually has a direct counter to a lot of the Shinju's key characteristic. His Sukuna Hikona can shrink down the claw marks to a point where the Shinju won't be able to use them, making it a lot more difficult for them to get around on the battlefield, and it will make their movements a lot more predictable. Once Kawaki gets his limiters removed, not only will he be a rival to Boruto in terms of physical power, but his Sukuna Hikona ability should be a lot more powerful as well in terms of range and targets. Ishiki in chapter 48 was able to shrink multiple objects at once, and he was able to do it effortlessly, something that we never saw Kawaki do in part 1 or part 2 of the series. Not to mention, there's also the possibility of Kawaki awakening his own Shinjutsu due to him having Shibai's DNA inside of him, because Amato implanted all the cyborgs in the Kara inner circle with Shibai's powers. So the war between the singularities and the Shinju is a lot more even than one might initially think at face value. And the only way it's going to stay that way is if Boruto and Kashin Koji continue to play their cards right.